Yeah. Yeah. I have been trying to work out how we could make it more personalized at the same time as being in VR. And I have various ideas for that actually, which could be
Yeah.
amazing, but, it would be just
Have you
a different
just on
experience.
that point, have you dabbled with Dali or Midjourney or any of these
No,
AI? No.
no. I will at some point. That's a shiny thing that will take my attention for sure when I have the time. Yeah.
Yeah, be careful. It's very shiny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. Interesting. And so through this process of there's kind of this back and forth between the application and the user. You're getting material from them that's deeply personal that then gets incorporated into future chapters. What does that mean? Like, can you give me an example of what that means in practice? Like, what happens in the story without giving it all away?
Yeah. Don't want to make it, I don't want to, create any spoilers for you, but I can tell you that there are lots of different ways in which that happens. I mean, so the ways that you
Mm,
can interact with the voice, sometimes you pick from a set option.
mm,
Sometimes you are just creating a reaction to them. You are deciding how you respond to something that they've said, which is all, whether you say something back or whether you stand silently or whether you give them a smile, for example, might sound like extremely basic filler
mhm,
choice, but they aren't. Because when you play, you really stop and think, oh, I don't know, how would I respond to that question? And how do I feel about this conversation? And how do I want to tackle that enormous wave that's about to swallow me up whole? There are lots of different ways it can happen, and the world can get quite dramatic. Um,
mhm,
when the game harvests your responses, we do that carefully to pick the right kind of response, of course. And
mm,
it gets fed back later, sometimes in ways that the player won't even realize, because it will be fed back in a sentence and it will just feel like a sentence that works for them because actually it's their stuff and they hadn't realized it. And sometimes it will be very obvious. The voice will say, when we were back in the second dream, you told me that you valued X. And I want to know now whatever the next question might be. Um, what is actually going on there is something very core to cognitive hypnotherapy, actually. So one of the reasons that cognitive hypnotherapy is not attempting to, and wouldn't be able to if it wanted to, just change somebody's mind in a way that the therapist thinks is right. So mind doesn't work like that. We're cleverer than that. We make look like chickens for fun, but we're not buying into that 100%. But we will buy into our own ideas. If you walk into a therapy room and you tell somebody you want to feel calmer, actually normally you say, I want to feel less anxious. Then you start to
mm,
focus on what that means. What is, if you're less anxious, what are you more of? Well, I would be calmer. I'd be more focused at work. I'd be more present with my partner and my kids. This information is important because if you feed that back when somebody is, for example, thinking about their future, and you say to them, so I'd like you to imagine a future version of you who is increasingly present with their kids and increasingly present with their partner. They're able to focus at work. What does this mean to you? Why would you want this world? Now the person is buying into a possibility that perhaps they haven't thought of before because they were so busy focusing on the anxiety that they saw as this monstrous thing that had to be
mhm,
deleted. But we all know what happens if you focus on the thing you don't want. If
mhm,
you're getting ready to get married and all you can think about is tripping over in the aisle, you're making that more likely. If you're cycling
mm,
down a road and you focus only on the pothole, obviously you're making it more likely you're going to cycle into it. You need to flip the question around and start thinking about what you do want. So
mm,
when Betwixt is farming and harvesting these bits of information, that's essentially what it's doing. Important bits of information that the user um, uh, talks about at various different times that can then later on be fed back in this sort of world building into the game itself. So they become a reality of sorts already, and that they can be a part of how somebody will see their future. That's all going to sound super abstract, but it's a wonderful thing because it means that you can completely forget that you told the voice something. And bearing in mind, I've obviously tested the game, I don't know how many times, hundreds of times. And I will do it by binging it. I'll have to sit down for 3 days and do all of the chapters. And
mm,
still, when I get to chapter 10 and 11, things get fed back and I'm like, oh yeah, I've completely forgotten I said that. Um, and it's delightful and also really helps with self-reflection because you're like, why did I really say that? Did I really believe that at the time? No, is that actually what I want? Or is that actually how I feel? Because
mm.
it creates this separation between you and the rambling thoughts that come out of your mouth in the game, your virtual mouth in the game, which builds awareness.